All right. So today I'm going to do what I hope is a quick lightning round about rhetoric and vaccines. Um, the goal here is to give some talking points to think about if you are teaching about vaccines. And this is from the perspective of, an English instructor. I teach English 101 and 102 at a community college. And there are many, many misconceptions out there about vaccines. And, there is this, prevailing public perception that vaccines cause autism or that vaccines cause other disorders. And I think it's important to teach our students that vaccines don't cause autism. That there is a lot of evidence showing that vaccines and autism are not correlated. Countries that have higher vaccination rates, they do not have higher autism rates. Um, Countries with fewer vaccines don't have lower autism rates. They've studied individual children from multiple European countries, and they have found that children who have been vaccinated are no more likely to have autism than those who have not been vaccinated. And so there can't be a causation when there isn't even a correlation between these two things. And so that is your first talking point right there. When we talk about whether or not vaccines cause autism, look at the scientific studies, the longitudinal studies, where they have shown that there is no correlation. The next thing you want to look at are, is that balance of research. There have been a few studies that have claimed to find links between vaccines and autism. The first major one was a study by Andrew Wakefield that was published in 1998. And his study looked at, 12 children who had previously been diagnosed with autism. And his study purported to show that, the MMR vaccine had led to intestinal problems that caused the autism in these children. Well, it turns out that he was being funded by personal injury lawyers who wanted to sue vaccine manufacturers on behalf of families with autistic children. And the data he gathered was flawed, and it looked like, the evidence indicates that his data was extremely misleading. I would go further than that, but I don't have the medical authority to say just how flawed it was. But there are sources out there you should look up talking about the major significant problems with Wakefield's work and how the press conferences he gave actually created a health problem because parents stopped vaccinating their children, and this led to outbreaks of measles. And measles is a very, very dangerous disease. You do not want to catch this. It, research indicates that measles essentially resets a child's immune system. it does have long-lasting, um, you know, it can have long-lasting injury to a child. It can affect, um, a lot of different bodily systems. So when we talk about the quote-unquote link between, autism and vaccines, a key thing to look at is, who is saying that this link is there? Are they credible scientific studies? How do they compare to the literally dozens of studies showing that there is no link? The the next thing to look at is the the fact that, well, the fact that we don't understand the causes of autism. The fact that, you know, people don't know why autism happens. We don't understand, the full impacts, the full effects. And so it's very, very tempting to grasp at any small piece of evidence, any small theory, even if that theory does not have evidence to support it. Um, and this is why, a study like Andrew Wakefield's is so dangerous. Um, you know, when you have someone who is a medical physician who claims to have found the answer, those who don't know better will be tempted to follow that because it's much more comforting than the entire rest of the medical community who says, well, we don't have an answer for you. All right? The medical community can go and, and do all kinds of studies showing what doesn't cause autism. But if they don't have any cause to provide, if they don't have any single thing people can do, then families can feel hopeless and helpless. Now, for myself, one reason I researched this topic is, my brother is autistic, and I've also had a number of friends who are autistic, and the one unifying thing is that every autistic individual I have met is different. My brother is, very different from the students I've had who are on the spectrum. Uh, and then they are very different from one of my friends from graduate school. And I think one of the major problems we have as a society is that people search for easy answers rather than trying to understand the complexities of individuals. And this brings us to the next thing to consider if you are discussing vaccines and discussing autism. And, this is the fact that, it's irresponsible to try describing autism as any one thing when it is so many different things to so many different people. And this is one of the causes of major controversy because there are some who treat autism as a disorder to be cured. Okay, and the reason for this is that some individuals with autism have real difficulty in our society. We don't have a society that is forgiving when it comes to, individuals who, may do sudden hand motions or who may recoil from others if touched. Um, you know, but on the other hand, you know, we have a number of folks who are on the spectrum who, you know, do very, very well in their occupations and their careers. And, telling them that they are somehow have a disorder can feel very insulting, I imagine. And so, and then, that contrasts with individuals who need very intensive, lifelong care. Um, and so it's very important that when we talk about vaccines and we talk about autism, that we don't gloss over the uniqueness of each person. Um, you know, at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not choosing evidence based on what you want to see. All right. So, for example, when I was first researching, vaccines and autism, I'll admit I was predisposed to not believe that vaccines cause autism, because my mom is a nurse. I've known my whole life that vaccines prevent disease. And when I approached the research, you know, my original goal was to kind of see, why are people saying vaccines cause autism? And there was a time where I was kind of shifted toward wondering if vaccines cause problems because there's a book called Vaccine A, and this book had evidence that the anthrax vaccine caused Gulf War syndrome. And the book felt compelling to me. It was also written by a physician, just like Andrew Wakefield. Um, and the problem with the book is that, again, they had faulty research. It's since been shown that Gulf War syndrome was caused by, um, or at least, well, the most compelling evidence I have seen is that Gulf War syndrome was caused by exposure to nerve gas from Saddam's arsenal. In 1990, 1991, Saddam Hussein did have nerve gas stockpiles. We bombed those stockpiles, causing that nerve gas to be released into the air. Um, some of it did reach American bases in very low dose quantities, not enough to be fatal. But based on studies, they believe that those small doses were enough to cause the nerve damage consistent with Gulf War syndrome. And I think we're going to have a similar situation when it comes to autism. Not necessarily that there's a single environmental thing that causes autism. I don't think there is any one single cause. But I believe what's happening is that we have a number of individuals out there who have come up with theories about why they think vaccines have caused autism, just like this one physician felt that the anthrax vaccine caused Gulf War syndrome. I think with time and more research, we're going to find that there are causes, there are contributing factors that are, likely very subtle, likely very hard to control. Um, I think it's a mistake to jump to conclusions without evidence. All right, it's one thing to say, "Oh, we should test to see if vaccines cause autism." Quite another thing to ignore the fact that we have already done these tests. We have already found that the link is not there. So, I'm sorry that this video's been a bit rambly. I don't exactly script out these videos. It's late at night, and so I'm kind of kind of burning off the caffeine I drank to drive home from teaching. But what I hope this video does is give enough to think about that, you may reconsider how you teach, or whether or not to teach vaccines. And one thing to be aware of is that there's a good chance that if this video somehow goes viral, there will likely be people in the comments saying that I am causing autism by promoting vaccines, or that I am purposely harming or killing children by saying vaccines don't cause autism. One of the major problems we have with our interconnected world is that many individuals have decided to not read any sources that disagree with their preconceived notions. And, I feel it's very, very important to understand what people say, why they say it, why they feel that way. Okay. Um, and I'll give a good example here. Jenny McCarthy, for many years was one of the strongest anti-vaccine advocates, and I'm going to call her an advocate because I did read, the opening chapter of one of her books, and she was talking about the experience of, going to the hospital with her son as he's loaded into the back of an ambulance. And, regardless of, my thoughts about Jenny McCarthy's perspective on vaccines, the trauma she was describing struck me as very real. Um, she had a child who suffered a great deal and was diagnosed with autism. And at that time, I imagine she felt desperate. Now, there are a lot of different views on Jenny McCarthy. I don't know if mine is accurate. But I do know that there are parents out there are families who feel trapped because they have children who have been diagnosed with autism, children who will need lifelong care, children who will not be able to grow up to live independently, children who are going to require a lot more support than, someone like me. My brother lives in a group home. I've been living independently since, I was 19 or 20. Um, and those things make a huge difference to families. And so it definitely makes sense to me why people go for the easy answers, because the situation's not easy. And so people will look for anything they can find. So with that, I hope this was helpful. And as always, please leave thoughts and questions in the comments. Thank you.